Little bit of pause there in my music, but hopefully the computer is not glitching too badly and the internet's working. Welcome back to the Player's Edge, everybody. As you can see, for those of you watching along on YouTube, we have the normal crew, Terry, Tom, and Swiss Army Sean. But tonight we have a very special guest. We have the morning line maker for New York racetracks, Belmont, Saratoga, and Aqueduct, David Aragona. Did I got that last name pronounced right, David? I hope.
Yep, rhymes with Arizona. Not too hard.
Well, with my last name, it's always messed up, Beaglemeyer, and I've taken absolutely zero offense ever to people screwing that up. Now, David, I feel almost like we're talking to almost like a magician, like as the line maker, like you have some special talent or knowledge or like an insider at a company that, the Gordon Gekko, for those people who have watched the movie Wall Street of horse racing, you have some inside information that if we can just unlock, everybody's always going to be a winner. Do you feel like when you come across people, that's what everybody thinks?
I don't know if it's so much like a magician kind of thing. I mean, to me, it's kind of like trying to learn as much as you can about the races and make the most educated guesses that you can, because, I mean, you can never know everything. And I try to view each race and each horse from as many different angles as I can, and that helps with making the morning line. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you're just making your best guess possible, and you try to learn from your mistakes and keep getting better at it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the handicapper's lifelong journey, right? I feel like when you finally do get it, that's when the big ticket in the sky calls you and says, you have too much information. You're never going to lose time to come home. Speaking of which, a friend of mine, Larry, when he found out you were coming on the show, asked me to ask. So when you set a morning line, let's say like 20-1, and then the horse gets bet down 3-1, 5-2, becomes the favorite and goes on and wins. Do you feel like that just the barn, the people around the horse, they knew and they just came in and bet it hard? Or do you kind of look back to see if you missed something?
Well, luckily, an example that drastic hasn't happened to me too much, but I mean, there have been a couple times where I've got one really wrong like that. It's actually happened a couple times at Saratoga, and usually that's the case where it is something like there's a big tip on the horse. I remember one pretty clearly from a couple of years ago at Saratoga. There was a New York bred maiden that had apparently a really fast workout and very impressive. There were workout reports that were raving about the horse, and she wasn't competitive on form, so I made her 15-1 on the line. She ended up going off at 2-1 and winning easily. So it was just one where I wasn't privy to certain information. And typically that is how it works out. If you don't have all the information, you're probably going to get it wrong.
Uh-huh. Now, the person who typically does have all the information for us is Terry Hollywood. Hey, he's our West Coast resident. Terry, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing really good. And I had a question for you. I was wondering, do you try to set the morning line odds based on what you think's going to happen with the race or the horses, how they're going to run, or do you do it how you think the public's going to feel?
Oh, for me, it's all about just trying to predict what the final odds are going to be. I mean, for me, a successful line is one that's basically mirrored by the final odds at post time. So I try to take my own opinions out of it. I'll save that for the handicapping and whatever bets I want to make. But as far as setting the morning line goes, I'm just trying to predict what the public is going to do and where they're going to put their money.
Okay, and I did have one other question. How did you get interested in getting involved with horse racing?
Oh, I think it's a pretty cliche story. I started going to the racing with my dad when I was a kid. He and my uncle were really into horse racing. They would go to Saratoga every summer. I grew up in northern New Jersey, so they'd go to Monmouth Park quite a bit. They had some connections there. So I just kind of grew up around it all the time and kind of just developed into a passion of mine.
Hey, that's the way it happened with me too, so it sounds great.
You can see the moniker for the next guy is 53-1 Tom. He loves the long shots, the ones that you guys misprice, and he can go ahead and he cashed a 53-1 last week, and he still got it up there. So I don't know if he's got another one to tell us about, or he's just still relishing in the last one.
No, I was really happy with a Gosden Dettori horse that won, and I dumped some decent money on it. Yeah, I went off at 2-1, but still, I'm not complaining. I have a question for you on terms of the different tracks the NYRA has, Aqueduct, Saratoga, and Belmont. Which one is the hardest for you to set the line on?
Oh, I would say definitely Saratoga, because kind of like that example that I brought up before, there's so much information out there. And I feel like the people that play Saratoga seriously have access to a lot of that information. So I just find that I have to do so much extra work for those races, especially because they run so many of those 2-year-old maiden races with a lot of first-time starters. And I try to do as much as I can to figure out who's working well, which connections really like their horses. And that takes a lot of work. So Saratoga is always the most difficult, but by the same token, it's always the most rewarding when you get those right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not called the graveyard of favorites for nothing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then, of course, we have the handyman that does everything around here for us, Swiss Army Sean. Sean, how are you doing tonight? I know you feeling a little better from your dentist trip earlier today.
Yeah, got the dentist cleaning out of the way, and now ready to head into the weekend. So I'm feeling good now. You always have the dentist over your head to get through the week. Now I got through that. I watched that Steve Martin YouTube video. That's how the dentist used to be for me. That's what it felt like. But
for those that don't get the reference, in the movie Little Shop of Horrors, Steve Martin plays a dentist. I don't know if you've seen it. If you've not seen it, go ahead and Google it. You'll probably get a laugh.
My question, David, well, I have a couple. My first one is, what formula do you use to like balance out the morning line odds to make it like what it's going to be with the public?
I wouldn't say that I've got like a special formula. I mean, as far as like making all the odds add up so that you don't go over the amount of money the public's going to bet, there's a pretty simple formula for just taking out the takeout and having the odds add up to a certain number of points, is what they call them, I guess, in the trade. I try to shoot for somewhere between like 125 and 128 points, and that's just adjusting over like 100% for the what the track takes out from the win pool. But that's really all that I use for figuring out the mathematical side of it. And as far as deciding what price to make the horses, I don't have like a formula for like weighing certain factors more heavily than the others. I just try to get a feel for it and kind of handle every race the way that feels appropriate to me.
So I'm sorry, go Sean. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm going to go into another question, so you're good.
No, I was just going to ask. So you take a look at what the average pool size is for the horses at the specific like maiden races, stakes races, all that sort of stuff, and then from there you work backwards to make your odds.
What I was getting at is like say at NYRA, the takeout in the win pool, I believe, is 16%. So converted into points, that would be like 119 points when you do the division. So you would add it up that, and then I typically go a little bit over because odds are always rounded down. Like a horse that goes off at 2.4 to 1 is going to go off at 2 to 1. So or that display is that, I should say, on the tote board. So I always add a couple extra points to what you're allowed based on the takeout. But that's what I was getting at. Just trying to make sure that you're not making too many horses short prices, because that's not how it's gonna. You don't want to have so many like odds on and 2 to 1 choices in the race, because that's not how the public's gonna bet it.
Yeah, I understand. So all the implied probabilities add up to more than 100 because of the takeout. Yes, yeah. Right, I understand. Sorry, Sean, for interrupting you. I do it all the time, but I'm sorry.
No problem. And one of my other questions is, how much do you think the morning line influences the public? Like, we know, for example, when we start a pick 4 and a pick 4, it's so hard to leave the favorite out because you don't want to get burned on the favorite. So how much do you think, if you make a horse even money, how much do you think you're influencing the public?
I don't think it influences the win odds very much at all. Typically, by the time the horses break from the gate, anybody who's wanted to bet a substantial amount on the races has kind of caused everything to even out. You will see the morning line affect, their early wagering in the win pool a bit. If, like, say, I made a horse 10 to 1 that's supposed to go off at 3 to 1, you're going to see that horse open at a very short price probably, and then drift up a little bit, because a lot of people who bet early thought that they were going to get that 10 to 1 price, and that would be a popular horse. But things tend to even out by the time the horses break from the gate. I would say that's only not the case in multi-race wagers, where if, let's say that I made a horse way too big a price on the line that went off at a shorter price in a later race in a multi-race sequence, you might see that horse's multi-race payout by the time they get to that race be a little bit inflated. But it can be hard to predict those, or to actually play the races to capitalize on that stuff.
Then my last question, and we've all done it. We've all set the morning line ourselves. How long does this take you, like, for one card? to
I mean,
set the morning line?
yeah, it depends on how tough the card is. I mean, sometimes in the winter at Aqueduct, I can get one done in just over an hour and a half. Some of the really tough cards at Saratoga, I'll like spend 3 to 4 hours agonizing over, trying to make sure that I've accounted for everything and done all the research. So it really depends on how involved each of the races are. But typically it's somewhere in that like 2 to 2.5 hour range.
So I have one quick question for you. The average morning line favorite wins at about 29, 30%, somewhere in that range. Do you keep track of how often your morning line favorite wins?
You know, when I first started doing it, I did keep a lot of statistics on myself just to try to make sure that I was doing a decent job and improving along the way. I mean, once it got to a point where I felt like things were pretty steady, I stopped tracking myself as much. But yeah, I did used to look at that data quite a bit. And I mean, I've got some spreadsheets somewhere that I can look up. But you know, I think I was getting the morning line favorite right at about 70% of the time consistently.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Okay, well, let's get into the races. We're going to start with race number 7, I believe it is. That is the Belmont. Oh, I got the wrong one up here. How about that? I do that too frequently. 7th race, the Belmont Oaks Invitational. Here you can see David's morning line odds straight from his Twitter account. David, it looks like you have Santa Barbara, the Irish Invader, as your even money choice. Tell us kind of what went into that thinking.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see how they bet both of these Aidan O'Brien horses in both the Belmont Derby and the Oaks. It feels like, based on form, that they have a real class edge against the American horses. But, you know, there's been a lot of talk about Aidan O'Brien not having the best record with these European shippers. And typically they don't take quite as much money as people assume that they will. And I probably was a little bit bold making this one even money on the line. We'll see how popular some of these American horses turn out to be. But they do have a lot to prove against this filly, who's already run well at the Group 1 level.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom is our resident international horse handicapper, so he's the one that has got me involved. We have a Friday show now at 1 o'clock Eastern time where we go over some races for the international scene. We'll be doing it tomorrow, 1 o'clock. I think we have 4 English races, and then Tom has a couple of Hong Kong races that he'll be putting in his article. So let's start with you, Tom. Who do you like in this race?
I did take Santa Barbara, and I took her because her Epsom Oaks race was, I refer to it as an adventure. It was not the best of race that she put. She went off the favorite. She got pushed along the 3 furlong marker and really didn't have much, and leveled off and didn't even get 4th. But Snowfall won by 18 lengths, so she was on fire that day. I mean, there was nobody going to beat her. In the Pretty Polly, I actually liked the favorite there. I mean, I picked my top horse was Thundering Knights, and she ran a super race, but they both did. I mean, this is a 3-year-old taking on the 4-year-olds and older, and she did a bang up job in that race, I thought. And let's keep in mind, Thundering Knights shipped into Belmont and lost to Mean Mary. So that should tell you a little about Mean Mary, how good she is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think back with the 3-year-olds, I think this is a much better spot for her. They're looking for a Grade 1 win, and Ryan Moore's coming over to ride. I also want to point out her dam, Sienna's Dream. Her offspring include Order of Australia, Breeders' Cup winner, and Idiris, also a Breeders' Cup winner. So her pedigree is outstanding. My next choice is Sirona. Her last race was, well, not great. She got stuck on the rail, and she shifted between 6th and 10th in that race, and she had nowhere to go, and there's no way she was going to get out. She didn't even have a chance in this race. Aidan O'Brien horse did win this race, Joan of Arc. And she, you know, it's $1 million race. So, I mean, we're not talking chump change here. And she just really, I mean, the jockey just ended up backing off on her, and she still only lost by 3 3/4 lengths. So kind of interesting how she ran that. Her Nance race, she ran on heavy ground, and she won that race without any problem. Of course, Nance is not the top track, but her race prior to the pre-exited Diane was at Longchamp in a Group 1, and she just missed by a neck. So she's right. I think she's right in with this bunch. The other thing to think about her is that she is entered in a pre-entry in the ARC. So in October. So they've got big plans for this filly if she could prove out to be something special. My final was Kona Libra. I just think she's gonna, if she gets out and can cut that corner early, she's going to be sitting on the front end. And it's really going to be, she's like the running in the moisture, a little moisture in the track. The only question is grade 1 level, whether she can do that. And I think on the inner turf, she needs to establish position to have any chance in this race. And if she can do that, the jockey can get her to the position. I think she's got a chance here. So it'll be interesting to see how this race is run, because with that tropical storm moving through, this track is not going to be particularly pleasant to run on.
Yeah, that's a question I was going to have for you, David. With Elsa coming through, how does Belmont drain?
Well, I think a lot's going to depend on how much rain we get overnight tonight. The heavy stuff really hasn't fallen yet. I mean, there have been some few thunderstorms that have been rolling through all day, but I don't think we've gotten a whole lot of precipitation just yet. But I think that they're predicting an inch to an inch and a half to fall overnight tonight. So I think we'll be able to tell if they run any turf races tomorrow, which seems kind of doubtful at this point, at least how the track is looking, the main track is looking, and maybe that'll tell us how soft the turf is. But I would think that since they carded so many turf races on Saturday, they're going to keep obviously all the stakes races on the turf, and there might even be some turf races before they run these Belmont Oaks and Derby if they keep those on the grass. So you might get a bit of a read on how the course is playing.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine, the soft horses, the softer the track is, the more that the international horses will get play, because they tend to run on those kinds of surfaces more often over there than our horses do here. Terry, what about you? Who do you like in race number 7?
Oh, I like the number 1, Coma Lima. She's going for her 3rd win in a row, and during her career, she's finished in the money 90% of the time and winning 55% of those entries. In addition to that, she has won 5 out of 6 turf races and has the best turf speed among today's starter. She can lead or come from off the pace, which is an angle I really like. Then I like number 7, Plum Ally. Likes the distance and has a high percentage trainer and jockey. During her career, she's finished in the money 83% of the time and won 50% of those entries. She has a sharp 4-furlong workout on July 5th, the 49.3, best of 18. And then I like the horse coming in from overseas, number 5, Santa Barbara. Ran a good second against older horses in her last race. And that race was at today's distance, which shows it won't be a problem for her. This is the 3rd grade 1 race she's run in, which makes her very dangerous here. And then I like number 8, Gam's Mission. Has won 3 races out of 3 this year. She has the best last race speed rating in the race. And I think the way it'll run is that Comalina will go to the front. Number 5, Santa Barbara, will be in mid-pack and close coming into the stretch. Number 7 and number 8, Gam's Mission, will close from deep and try to catch Comalina.
Yeah, I kind of agree with a little bit of that. How about you, Sean? Where are you at?
I went with number 1, Conliba. Kind of same thing Terry said. I think has the advantage here. There's not much pace in this race, and I think with the rail, if she wants to lead, she's going to get it. She also, if this does come off the turf, she's held her own on a fast track and also a sloppy track, so she'll be fine on the dirt if that happens. I went with some prices after that. I went with number 3, Higher Truth. After a bad debut at Tampa Bay, she's won 2 in a row. Both came on the turf at this distance at Belmont, and she gets Jose Ortiz for Chad Brown. And then 3rd, I went with number 8, Gam's Mission, which Gam's Mission's one we covered, like a month ago. That was the one that I picked because I really liked the horse, but Cherry DeVoe, the trainer, was 0 for 30 and great at stakes. Well, now she's 1 for 34. So Gam's Mission's really stepping up, but this horse always seems to get there late. So she'll be tested here. I really like what I see, though, and as a closer, she'll be in the trifecta.
All right, David, off with the morning line cap and on with the handicapper cap. What do you like?
Well, in this race, I think those two hats will focus on the same horse because I picked Santa Barbara. I'm just not really thrilled with these American 3-year-old fillies that we've seen on the turf so far. They're okay. I mean, they're a decent bunch, but I think that they're going to be vulnerable to a really good European horse, and we have that in Santa Barbara. I mean, for all the reasons that have already been stated, she's kept some really good company overseas. Tom made great points about Thundering Knights, and even the horse who was third in that Pretty Polly, Cayenne Pepper. We saw her run decently in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf last year, so some familiar horses to American audiences. And she just seems like one that kind of needed those first couple of runs against Group 1 company when she was sent off favored in the 1,000 Guineas and the Epsom Oaks. And she found the right distance last time, going the 1.25 miles. She did get 12 pounds in receipt from those older horses, but that's how they do it in Europe. The 3-year-olds get a big weight allowance. And I don't think it matters that much. I mean, she was competitive with those horses. And if she shows up here, which isn't always a guarantee for these Aidan O'Brien runners, I think she's just going to be too tough for this field to beat. Behind her, I put Plum Ali second. I briefly thought about putting her on top because I do think she's the right horse to take out of the Wonder Again last time. That was a race where there was kind of a timer malfunction and you don't really know what the fractions were, but it was pretty clear the pace was really slow in that race, and she was at the back of the pack the entire way after breaking from the outside post position. Once she got into the clear in the stretch, she put in a real nice sprint finish and almost got there, and as long as she handles the extra furlong here going the 1.25 miles, I think that she can have a say in the outcome. It's just there's not a ton of speed in this race once again, so I'm not sure how much pace she's going to get to close into, and I do think she's going to have to take a real step forward if she's going to beat a horse like Santa Barbara. And then the other horse that I would consider, really the only other horse that I would consider as an alternative is the number 2 Sirona coming in from France. That Group 1 that she was second and 2 back, it's not like a Group 1 on the same level as the Pretty Polly that Santa Barbara comes out of, but she ran fine in that race. She obviously handles some given the ground, and she could kind of throw a wrench into the plans of Cone Lima if they do plan to send that one to the front, because this horse Sirona, she is a front runner. They just didn't get to the front last time in the Prix de Diane because she didn't break well coming out of the gate, but she does her best running on the lead, so I would imagine they're going to send her to the front in this race.
That's kind of what I'm looking at. Is I kind of like Cone Lima and Santa Barbara as my top 2 picks. I was watching this show on a YouTube show on horses to watch, and they were going over some races last week over at Belmont where they were showing the horses that could get down to the rail on the grass were having a lot of success. And I think you might see that. I think that Con Lima can get to a comfortable lead up front. And when I did my pace analysis, I think if she can get off to a good start, not have to run very fast, outside of Plum Ali and maybe Santa Barbara, her late pace figures aren't that much different than any other late comer. So she can get to the lead, have the right position on the track. She may not be the best horse in this race, but she might end up getting the best trip in this race. And sometimes that's what you need to win. So I have Con Lima. I have Santa Barbara. I do think Plum Ali will be coming as hard as any horse late. And I think Spanish Love Affair probably, in my opinion, offers the most value relative to David's morning line. We'll see how that works out. And now we'll move off to race number 8. Let me bring this screen in. I'm working very hard on trying to mess this up. Let's see. It's supposed to come in. Here we go. Race number 8. Where are you at? Share my screen. Here we go. Race number 8, the Victory Ride Stakes. This one's 6.5 furlongs on the dirt, and if I remember correctly, has a pretty heavy speed bias. I think something like 69%, 61%, somewhere in there. Speed horses win, with the rail collecting about 20% of the wins. The 2 and 3 horses, a little lower than that, 31% on the rail, I'm sorry, and then 4 through 7. So the farther away you get from the rail, the lower the win rates go. Have you found that to hold up to be the case, David?
Post position stats aren't something that I look at that often. I try to just kind of assess each horse and the trip that they're likely to get from that post position. But that's not something that I've personally paid a lot of attention to.
No. Okay. And then, so your money line, your morning line maker hat, tell us why you made the favorite in Miss Brazil. Oh no, Australia. I'm sorry, Australasia.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these three major players coming out of the same prep race, so that kind of makes it easier for me because I get to see, number one, how they fared against each other last time, and number two, how the public assessed them last time. And they did send Miss Brazil off as the 4-5 favorite in that Jersey Girl, and she had excuses in that race, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Australasia, she was just the best horse that day, so I think that maybe the public underrated her a little bit coming in, even though she was undefeated 5-for-5 coming into that race. She hadn't really been tested against top-level open stakes company, and she passed that test with flying colors. So she feels like the horse that is the one to beat this time, and just a matter of whether or not she can handle the tougher field.
So from the morning line making hat to the handicapping hat, who do you like in this race?
I actually picked the favorite in this one, Australasia. I don't like to pick the favorites in these races, but I'm doing it twice in a row in these first two stakes we talk about because I was really impressed with her performance in the Jersey Girl last time. For a race that did feature quite a bit of early speed, they actually didn't go that quickly up front. I mean, 45 and 3 to the half is not that fast for top-level fillies when the final time is 109. And, I like to look sometimes at the trackist data that NYRA provides on their website that will include closing splits for each horse in the race. And they had Australasia coming home her final quarter in 22.9 seconds, which is just as fast as you're going to see a horse come home in a dirt race. So I was really impressed with the run that she put in. Seems like she's really found a home sprinting after trying a few different types of distances at the fairgrounds over the winter. And I think she's going to get plenty of pace to close into once again in this race. There are a couple of horses that could scratch out of here. I think Overcharged is cross-entered in a race, and Bella Sophia has been re-entered in an allowance race on Sunday at Belmont, where she'll likely be odds on if she starts there. So this field could change a little bit, but I still think there's some speed signed on, and Australasia just looks like the right one to me. And behind her, I mean, Miss Brazil, she had an excuse last time when she lost to Australasia in the Jersey Girl because she broke through the gate ahead of the start. She didn't really run off, but she had to be reloaded, and then she was a little sluggish coming out of the gate when the race actually began. So I don't think it was the perfect trip for Miss Brazil, and she's shown talent in the past, and she can definitely bounce back here, but she's just going to have to contend with some other horses that want to be forwardly placed. And if it is a hot pace, the other horse that I do want to upgrade at a bigger price is the number 5 Super Sensational. More is like an underneath type because she had a bit of traffic trouble at the top of the stretch of the 8 Bells last time, and she had done well sprinting early in her career. So she is one that I think might be suited to this 6.5 furlong distance, but she obviously would have to take a step forward if she's going to do better than just get a piece of this.
Mm-hmm. Terry, you're usually the one that agrees the most with the guests. Do you agree here too?
I absolutely do. As far as number 7, Australasia, of course, she's won all of her races. I mean, what more can you say? She has a high percentage trainer-jockey combination in Brad Cox and Joel Rosario, and she has the highest last race speeding rating among the competition. Then I like number 3, Miss Brazil. As David said, she broke through the gate in her last race, and that could have affected her race that day. She likes this distance win in both of her start at today's distance, and she has a very good workout at Belmont. She at 4 furlongs, 47 breezing. She was the best of 96 workouts that day. Then I like number 1, Bella Sophia, and had trouble in her last race at Belmont and still ran a good second. During her career, she's finished in the money 75% of the time, winning 38% of those entries. She has the rail post, which is winning at a 31% clip. And then number 2, Inject, is going up in class and going for a hat trick after winning 2 races in a row. She's trained by Brad Cox, who has been hot the last 14 days. Out of 6 entries, has had 2 wins and a third. And I think the way it'll go is several horses will go to the lead and try to go all the way. And number 7, Australasia, will come from behind. It sets up perfectly for her because she's one of the only horses that come from back to end, and I think she'll end up winning the race.
All right, Sean, do you have them coming from the back too, or do you have a little bit of a different pace play?
I have a little bit of different pace. I expect like 3 or 4 horses to go for the lead, depending on the scratches, and number 7, Australasia, just to sit right behind him, and it should set up perfectly for him. Done nothing wrong, winning all 6. Beat 2 of these horses last start. Like David said, Miss Brazil was one of them. Has won at all kinds of distance. Actually, this is his 7th start, and every single race has been a different distance besides this one. This will be the first time that he's repeating at a distance. I like this horse a lot better than I would go for the 1-1 in the last race of the other race, Santa Barbara. I like this one at 2-1. I would use this in all kinds of sequences, pick 3s, pick 4s, and either single him or pick one other horse with him. The other horse that I found interesting at 10-1 if he does run is number 4 Overcharged, 2 for 2 and has dominated each race. Obviously stepping up here, but she's getting better as the races go on, and this is an extra furlong. Also, last race had to deal with the slop and no whip since it was at Monmouth, and we've seen a lot where the leaders with no whip, they tend to come back. This horse kept going. And then I used number 1 Bella Sophia, only lost by 1 length last time to number 7 Australasia. That was after a bobbled break. Does lose Saez, but Manny Franco has been riding really well as well.
I think if I remember correctly, he's 2-0 with Manny Franco in the irons. So it doesn't surprise me that they go back to Manny Franco. Tom, we're waiting for your long shot here.
Oh, I've got one.
All right.
I picked number 5, Super Sensational. She wins her first 2 races at Woodbine, and then she moves up to Graded Stakes Company, longer distances, and nothing. As the comment was made with her 7 furlong race at Churchill last time out, she had trouble. And it looks like that the sprint distances between 6 and 7 are her ballywick, I think. She's got 2 really good works of 58-4 and 47 at Churchill after that race. She has worked in the sloppy conditions, so I like to see that. I really think this distance suits her. And the other thing that is important is that, for me, is that she's by Curlin, who his offspring have done very well on the off track, and the dam also likes the off track. So I'm looking for some odds, and I'm thinking that she can put it together in this race. I picked number 2, Inject, as my second choice. Torn between the 2 Brad Cox horses. I just think this one just keeps improving and improving. And so raised at Perry Meadows, but it's 1 on the muddy track. It's got a 3rd on the muddy track. I'm just looking for it to hit the board, and I think it'll come in at some kind of a price. Keeping in mind that Brad Cox right now has 10 wins at Belmont, and he's running at a 28% win rate, so it's not so bad.
Well, he wins wherever he goes.
She ran a great race last time out. I think it's interesting. We've got 2 Louisiana breds in this race, and this is one of them. She's like the mud. She wants an off track. I think she'll be fine on that. I just don't think she's going to be able to handle the long Belmont turn as well. Fairgrounds is much quicker and shorter. So is, in my opinion, so is Monmouth. This is a wide sweeping turn, and I think she's going to have a little more problems with that than she's had in the past. And that's why I went with some other horses instead.
All right. For me, when I look at the pace setup here, it looks to me like it's speed wins. The 1 horse, if he doesn't scratch out, Bella Sophia, should be pretty close to the pace early on. I have the 6, the 1, and the 2 probably setting the early tone. And then the interesting thing to me is when I look at the late pace figures and I do my late pace projections, the 1 is the second fastest in the first quarter of a mile and also has the second best late pace figure. So I think if Bella Sophia doesn't scratch out, gets a good trip, gets on that rail, which is winning at 31%, Bella Sophia can, again, be not necessarily the best horse in the race, but could end up getting the best trip, the right setup for the running style, and then it does have the late legs to bring it home. I like Australasia as my second pick, and then Miss Brazil bringing home the trifecta. And for me, my final pick is Red Ghost. That's a horse, again, that I think does provide better value than 10. I think it'll run better than 10-1 odds where the morning line is at right now. So now we're going to finish off our day with race number 9. That is the Belmont Derby Invitational. Again, David, I'm going to ask you your thinking behind Bolshoi Ballet. I probably pronounced that wrong because I'm great with those foreign sounding words.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll get some window into how they're going to bet these Aidan O'Brien horses by the time they run this race, because the Belmont Oaks will have already gone off. I bet both of these horses substantial favorites, just kind of based on the hype coming in and their overseas form. It seems like these are two of Aidan O'Brien's better 3-year-olds, and he rarely sends his top string runners to the U.S. for these races. So I think people will be aware that these horses are better than the ones that he usually sends. And, Bolshoi Ballet just seems like he's proven at this distance he's going to get the kind of turf course that he likes, as long as not too much rain falls. And he just makes a lot of sense in here. And the Americans, they kind of do have to step up to get on terms with him. But I do think that there are some Americans in this race who merit consideration, who've already proven their quality, like Hard Love and De Jour. And that's why the second and third choice is on the line.
And is that how you lining them up for your picks?
No. If you want to start with me,
we'll start with you again.
I think Bolshoi Ballet is definitely a contender in this race. And I mean, he was so impressive in that Darrenstown Stud Derby trial 2 back. I mean, when he won by 6 lengths over a solid field. I mean, watching that race, you can see why he was such a heavy favorite in the Epsom Derby after that. And he didn't run well in that race last time, but I mean, you can make excuses. I know that the stable said that he came out of the race with some cuts on his leg, and that's why he didn't run well. So, I mean, if that is a legitimate excuse for him, then I guess it's reasonable to think he's going to bounce back here. And if he bounces back to his effort 2 back, I think everybody else might be running for second. But I have some questions about him. I think he's going to be a relatively short price. And like I keep saying, these Aidan O'Brien horses, they typically do get a little, I don't want to say overbet, they underperform, I think, based on expectations coming over here. So I'm a little bit more skeptical of this one against this field than I am with Santa Barbara against the fillies. So I did pick against Bolshoi Ballet, and Hard Love, who's the second choice on the line, I think he's a major contender in here. I mean, he's just done nothing wrong in his 4 starts so far. I mean, he just has that one loss where he was beaten by a 2-year-old last year at Aqueduct, who looked like he was going to be one of the best turf horses in the country. He kind of hasn't developed like that. But Hard Love has gone on to continue developing, and I like both of his starts so far this year. I mean, he was kind of workmanlike in that win at Aqueduct 2 back, but that's proven to be a decent race. And the Connections kind of had to call an audible last time because they had entered him in that Pennine Ridge against the 3-year-olds, which is the traditional prep for this race. And they were kind of forced to run against the older horses in that allowance race when the Pennine Ridge came off the turf. And he handled himself really well in that race. I mean, they sent him off at 5-1, kind of not respecting his lower speed figures against those seasoned older horses. But he was able to win that race, and he's got the right kind of running style for this. I think 1.25 miles is going to be within his scope. So he makes a lot of sense to me. But like I said, I think he's going to be the second choice in here. There's a horse in this race at a bigger price that I made my top pick, who's admittedly a little bit of a reach, but just a horse that I think is kind of coming into this race underrated. And that's the number 3, Safe Conduct. I made him 15-1 for this kind of horse. I would need to get every bit of that price because he should be a big price in this race. I just think that he's shown real ability in his turf races. Not so much when he was a 2-year-old, because he got things his own way when he won at Saratoga and was a big price that day. But he's just really come around as a 3-year-old. I mean, the start of the layoff at Gulfstream was okay, but I loved his performance 2 back at Belmont when he won that allowance race by 2.5 lengths. I mean, that was a really solid field to runner up in their public sector. I mean, he's since come back and almost won a stakes. That's a pretty good Chad Brown horse that he was soundly defeating. And he just sprinted through the lane that day, really finished with a nice turn of foot. And he stayed in that Pennine Ridge last time, didn't get the prep that they were hoping on the turf, but he at least got a run under him on the dirt. And I think the fact that he's got that dirt race kind of muddying up his form, it's just going to drive the price up when he runs back on the turf here. So I think Safe Conduct is better than he looks, and he's going to have to produce a career best performance to beat this field. But I just think he's the kind of horse that will present that quote unquote value.
I have a quick question for you. In your notes here, you designate a horse with an O, which means off Lasix, right? This is a new thing in 2021 where horses used to run on Lasix. They no longer run on Lasix in a lot of these stakes races at the bigger tracks specifically. So have you found that makes much of a difference, or have you not do you factor that into your odds making or not?
I don't really factor it into the odds making at all. And as far as it making a difference in handicapping, I think with certain horses, which is a very rare situation, if you know that they're bleeders, then you would want to factor it into your handicapping. But in a lot of these situations, if a trainer has a known bleeder, they're just not going to run in these non-Lasix races. So I don't think that we come up with those situations that often. And we have seen some examples of horses bleeding without Lasix. We've seen some examples of horses bleeding through Lasix. And a lot of horses, they will bleed. I mean, there's I think a 1 to 5 scale of how severely horses will bleed when they scope them after a race. And a lot of horses will bleed on a 1 or a 2, and it won't affect their performance at all. It's rare to find horses that are bleeding so severely that it's affecting their performances significantly. So I'm not factoring it in too much. And I frankly haven't seen horses regressing from a form standpoint that much when they race off Lasix.
Yeah, that's something we've been kind of juggling around a little bit here, is whether or not that's going to be a big, pay a bigger role in the race than we probably think. It probably plays a lesser role in the race than we've thought it has so far. Right, Sean?
Right, and with Hard Love, the last race she did have Lasix, but the first 3 she didn't. So I don't think it's really going to affect. Did all right there, and Hard Love is my top pick. She's won 3 out of 4 career races, all on the turf. 2 were at Belmont, both with Manny Franco aboard. Franco and trainer Jonathan Thomas are 3 out of 4 the last 60 days when teaming up together, and Thomas is sitting at 35% so far this year. Should be really close to the pace and get a good run from there. I do see pace was really hard to predict here. I could see 4 horses that want to be up front or close. Sainthood, De Jour, Hard Love, and number 8, Celis. And then we have the international horses, which I can never predict on where they're going to be. I will say, David was saying about Aidan O'Brien's stats. He's 2 for 62 in graded stakes. So I can't take that lower price with that kind of number. So I went Hard Love. And
but you can go over 31.
I really, really like that horse, and I knew that horse's form. The international, I'll go on the numbers with that one, and a low price. Plus, I was getting a better price with Gavin's Mission, and she was 6-1 in that race. Mm-hmm. De Jour is my second pick. Won all 3 in a row, all with Pratt aboard. And this horse can run either way, run close to pace or off. It doesn't seem to matter. And then my third choice, I went with number 4, Sainthood. If he likes the turf, could be dangerous here. Is bred for it. Only race he hasn't finished in the exacta is the Derby. So this horse is very talented, and we'll see what he has to offer in the turf.
Tom, this feels like your race is written all over it, because you have a couple of short shots and then a lot of longer shots.
Yeah, you are right on, because I did take Bolshoi by LA as my top choice. I do agree with David in terms of the analysis of Aidan O'Brien sending his best horses over here, with the exception of his best horse, which we saw win last weekend, St. Mark's Basilica, which is definitely the best of his bunch of the 3-year-olds right now.
I picked them,
and you did pick them. And but I, this if you call this a second level horse, this certainly is not. Very good horse. The Epsom Derby was, he was in contact for 3 furlongs. With 3 furlongs left, he was out of contact. And when they asked him to run, he didn't go. And so I'm tossing that race. Interesting point in that race, of course, is that the horse that finished third, which is a horse that Rich liked, named by the name of Hurricane Lane, who won the Irish Derby.
Yes, so, I didn't know I liked that horse until a few weeks ago, but now he's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he's been well, and it was very impressive in the Irish Derby. So got to put him in there, and that race stacks up as being probably one of the better races. And so if he, with his problems and all that, I'll throw it out. I think the 1.25 miles is his distance. I don't think he wants longer than that. And I think that was part of the problem in the Epsom Derby, with being that's a 1.5 mile race versus 1.25 miles. He should like the going, and Ryan Moore, again, has got the mount. My second choice is Sainthood. He had a great race last time out, but it got moved from the turf. They keep trying to get this horse in the turf and not having a lot of luck, but he did win. And on the dirt, good effort. He had a good effort on the all weather at Turfway. Breeding says turf. His sire loved the turf, winning 6 races. But interesting, the sire also won on the dirt 3 times, including the Don Handicap. So it'll be interesting to see if that horse can get into gear on the turf and likes the off going. De Jour is my final choice. He's been switched from a trainer will not name to Belmont. Belmont's gotten 5 works into this horse since he's took him over, which is good to see. I always like that. He's won his last 3 starts have been very good. He got a grade 2 out of the last event, and it was his best rating of all the races he's run. So I think he's on the improve, and I think it's one that's very dangerous in here.
Okay, and then finally, Terry, who do you think's the most dangerous in here?
Oh, I like Hard Love. Has the best spurt turf speed among today's starters, and he's going up in class. But I always love playing horses that are climbing the class ladder. He has finished 100% of the time in the money during his career, winning 75% of those races. Then I like number 5, De Jour, is on top form, winning 4 races in a row. He has Platt again in the irons after he won riding him 3 times in his winning races. He has the highest per race earnings in the race. And then number 4, Sainthood, tries the turf for the first time, but his breeding suggests he will like the grass. He appears to be able to lead or come from off the pace. It is another angle that I really like. And then number 7, Tokyo Gold, has finished 75% of the money, winning 25% during his career. He has a hot jockey in John Balakis, who is in the last 7 days has been out of 8 races, has won 2, ran second twice, and third once. And I think number 4, Sainthood, and number 8, Chitzelis will go to the lead. Number 5, De Jour, and number 6, Hard Love will sit just behind the leaders and will close at the end to try and win the race. I think number 6, Hard Love, will outrun number 5, De Jour, to win.
All right. I think Hard Love is the consensus amongst all of us. That's who I have on top. Bolshoi Ballet I have second, and then I have De Jour third, followed by Sainthood. So I think, at least to me, after I did my work, the race is going to run to form. Not a lot of upsets here, though. If I were going to take a long shot, I was kind of picking between the 1 and the 7. I might lean the 1 over the 7 if I'm looking for a little bit of a price in the final race for us, race 9. And that wraps up our picks for the day. David, if there's one thing, David, that you would want to share with people to make them a better handicapper from your experience, I know you had mentioned in one of the podcasts that I watched that you like to start with the speed figure, kind of look at the pace of a race, see how it's going to shape out, and then kind of where the horses are going to be in their running style and how they fit. But if there was one piece of advice you would give folks to pick more winners, what would it be?
I guess watch trips. I mean, I think I've learned the most from just watching past races and getting a feel for how the horses run, seeing the trouble, seeing when there are fast paces, when they're against dynamics. I think you'll learn the most about what's kind of between the lines of the racing form by watching the trips.
Fantastic. David, if folks want to keep up with you, since you watch the trips and you write about them, you also put your picks out on Timeform, right?
Yep. You can follow me. I'll tweet the links all the time on Twitter if you're on there at Horse to Watch. That's my handle. You could also get my analysis on the NYRA.com website under the Timeform US Race Analysis page, and also on DeerF.com. I put out stuff there as well.
Fantastic. And then you see Mr. Terry has on his horse racing radar stuff. I have mine here too. So if you want to head on over to Facebook, if you like the way the hats look, it's good quality stuff. Probably makes me look better. Not hard to do. Head on over to Horse Racing Radar Facebook. Go ahead and pick some up in the shop. Sean, if they want to follow us socially, where do they do that?
Horse Racing Radar on Facebook and Twitter.
Horse Racing Radar on Facebook and Twitter. And this weekend on Saturday, we have free contests every week, David, at horseracingradar.com. Belmont is the track. So if you want to put David's picks in there, maybe David can join us. I don't know if he's allowed to do that or not, but it's $100 to the winner. Head on over to Horse Racing Radar. Make your picks absolutely free. If you get it put in, you can go over to Timeform. Of course, you could take a look at some of the stuff that we do here. There's picks on Horse Racing Radar. However it is you make your selections, make sure you head on over to Horse Racing Radar and make those picks, enter the contest. Again, it's absolutely free. David, it's been a joy having you on here. I appreciate it. I feel like I've learned much today, like I always do in these shows. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, it certainly was fun. Until we meet again next time, Tom and I will meet you tomorrow, 1:00 Eastern, to talk about international racing. I'll be doing some live commentary on Saturday for Belmont. I promise no Yankees commentary this week. And then Sean and I will probably be breaking down the Delaware race, the Delaware handicap tomorrow night. So make sure you tune in for all that. Until then, folks, good luck at the races.